bit shorter, so it's probably better to be in the middle.
Yeah.
My big giant.
We are on filmsgonewild.com. My name is John Wildman, I'm the editor-in-chief of Films Gone Wild, and we are continuing several interviews here at Dances with Films New York. We're at the Regal Union Square, and right now we're going to talk about one of our pilot presentations at the festival, Roots and Relics. Introduce yourselves, please.
My name is Matthew Avant.
My name is Katie Avant.
Okay, and you want to tell us what you've done in the film?
Yes, I'm the creator, director, writer.
And I am the producer.
Okay, now our audience likely has not seen Roots and Relics as yet, so introduce us to the project.
So Roots and Relics is a TV series that explores unique stories that are behind family heirlooms, personal artifacts, and sort of digs into the family connection to the various grander histories associated with that. So this pilot episode features a family that goes back 5 generations, and they've been on the same property this whole time, and they've made an incredible amount of discoveries on that property over the years. And so we decided to start with them just because they had such a robust story. And so that's where we started.
Well, you know, and it's interesting because we spend a good portion of this first episode in a cave, literally, and you know, I'm a genre guy, I'm a horror guy, so anytime I'm in a cave, I'm like going, is this thing going to take a turn? Are we going to find something, you know? And also because you guys hit, like, you know, there's part of the caves that nobody's ever been in.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and are we going to send our host there? Maybe we will. And, you know, and so I'm watching with that. And so my first question was, you know, the balance of when you have a series idea like this, you go, well, are we gonna, even though the premise and the thing is what it is, you know, are we gonna camp it up a little bit? Are we gonna you know, are we gonna make it academic? What are we? And so I would love for you two to talk about that, about, like, you know, what was in your mind of, like, going, well, we don't want to do this, even though we've got, you know, a colorful host, so to speak.
Right.
You know, we still want to keep it at, you know, a level here.
Sure, yeah. No, we definitely wanted to be somewhere in between camp and academic, right? You know, it's like we didn't want to do a deep dive. You know, there's a lot of sources where you can get the real deep dive into history, and then there's other places that offer you that sort of manufactured camp. We didn't really want to do that. We wanted to honor the truth and the history and the stories that exist in these families. That, to me, is really compelling. And I've said before, I've always been interested in history programming, and I know that there's plenty of shows that we watch, you know, where they're looking for Bigfoot, or they're looking for the treasures of Oak Island, or they're Expedition Unknown. Like, I love that type of show, but this, we wanted to stay somewhere in a little bit of the docuseries genre. We didn't want to manufacture anything. We wanted to stay true to the stories and through the lens of the people who were telling them. So every family that we would feature and every artifact we would feature would probably have a little bit of a different approach. Each one kind of dictates itself. So this one with the cave and the legend of the stories behind it, it felt like there was a mysterious air, and we did want to get a little bit of that in there, but we didn't want to manufacture anything. I didn't think it needed it. I didn't think we needed to make anything up. I didn't think we needed to try and make it seem anything more than it was. This is just a real place, a real family, a real history. And we wanted to do that in a fun and engaging way. Keep the viewer interested and keep them wanting more at the end.
Well, fun, engaging, entertaining doesn't always dovetail perfectly with who we have on camera.
Correct.
Right? And so I would love for you to talk about that, about our family, and about the folks that, you know, that our host is interacting with. Because, again, you're not casting them; they are who they are. And so I would love for you to talk about that aspect of, like, going, listen, this is, you know, not that this is what we're stuck with, but this is who we have.
Yep.
So how do we make the best out of this person who isn't necessarily a singing and a dancing for us? Right?
Yeah, definitely. So luckily, their family, Blacktail Ranch in Wolf Creek, Montana, is a guest ranch, and so they have families come out weekly throughout the summer. So they retell these stories to their guests every week. So they are basically press trained. And so for them to be in our first pilot, you know, they're just genuine people who know their story and they've rehearsed it several times, and so it wasn't hard to pick them because we knew they would be great on camera and they would not need, that extra push. But we've done several projects in the docu-space, and so, casting is always, for this one we just already knew them, but for other future projects, it will be part of the decision making. And generally we just make sure we at least meet with them a couple times and make sure we see them on video and it's not just through phone, because we've done that before and had some interesting situations. But now that we have Zoom and everything, it helps, make sure that we're going to get something robust and not have someone clam up or not be able to tell the story. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about this. Let's talk about the business of this. Have we shot additional episodes? How much have we mapped out? What is how is the legit business plan for Roots and Relics?
Yeah. So in general, there's a million of these stories. So we could go on, and we're really thinking about how to make this a movement more than just a TV series. And so we've got our social media set up already. Even at the festival this week, we've heard many people come tell us, oh, I have a sword, or I have this, or whatever. We have a Model A, and so we want to tell all of the stories in whatever medium makes sense for that story. So that's kind of the movement part, is just, we can take a couple pictures and a paragraph and tell your story on our Facebook page, but then we also have the plan for this show, which you could talk about.
Sure, yeah, and that's part of that vetting process, to your point. Sometimes maybe there is a really full, robust story that can fill half an hour time, and then maybe sometimes just a snippet of something that's interesting. Nothing's off the table for us, but that's a part of the fun of sort of exploring it. What are the stages or the layers to the story? Where did you start? Step one led to step two, led to step three, and then we landed here, right? And so that to me is just a big part of the fun, is researching that, digging into that. A lot of the stories that we have, so we have a plan for a good, dozen or so episodes that we'd love to do, kind of already laid out. We know who they are, we know where they live, we've already even communicated with many of them and said, hey, if we get a chance to come and tell your story, can we? And so everybody is really on board with that. And again, as we do that, there may be other layers to it that are also worth exploring, or maybe some that are worth saving for social media or for short form storytelling. But the really digging in and exploring for the bigger stories that have extra layers to them, that's the stuff we're looking for the most.
I've had conversations with a few other of our pilot presentation folks, and it goes again to the more recent developments in the business path of series, because now we have festivals, the film festivals that have, like Dances with Films, a legit program as part of their thing, alongside narrative features, documentaries, and shorts. Now we have pilots, and then we have a number of festivals that are strictly proof of concept or series. So as of 3 years ago, you wouldn't have that avenue to go, well, we could do a year tour, as we develop and try to sell this damn thing,
Sure.
which will hopefully help sell it. And now we're at a time with, whether it be, not just, broadcast TV or cable TV or streaming. Now we have verticals, we have, we have all these different things. So it's like there's so much, and yet it's still scary. And so for the two of you, whether it be this project or another, how are you guys approaching this shit now?
Yeah, right. No, I'm with you. So I'm an avid viewer of YouTube content. Almost everything I watch on YouTube. Whether it's an hour long or whether it's 2 minutes long. I love the freedom that people have to be able to share content. Because a lot of times just letting people hear the stories are what you want. We tend to, as filmmakers or storytellers, we tend to hide our work. We hide it behind paywall or behind Vimeo passwords and things, and we don't want to share it. This is something that it means more to me to share than to keep to myself. And so we really definitely like this approach of knowing, yeah, that's right. I understand that cable is what it is, and the media and the industry is changing in so many ways, but I also really appreciate that it's created a space for individual storytellers to get their stories out in whatever way they see fit. And we like that. I really appreciate that freedom because I feel like it gives us a chance to explore and to grow something the way we would want to do it on our own. The point to us is we want this to have a home where it makes the most sense. Where is it going to reach the people who are interested in this the most? You know, I'm not looking for a broad, you know, audience that may not care about the history. This is something that, to her point, we want to make it a movement. We want to inspire people to dig into their own stories. Go talk to your family members. Go ask questions, you know, but learn about yourself because there's so much we have to learn about ourselves we kind of don't know. I feel like young people, I did it myself when I was young. I, you know, maybe didn't care, you know, about grandma's homestead, you know, or whatever. And as I've gotten older, I realized, man, you start to look back, you start to really want to know where you came from. And there's so many things about my own family I don't know that my dad knew that I wish I would have had a chance to ask him or dug into further when he was still alive. And so that really means more to us. Yes, we want to tell stories. Yes, we want to make a show. Yes, we want to create content. But we want people to remember that there was a big, long world of stories that came before us, and they're really interesting if you dig into it. There's broad history. We all know broad history. But there's so much minutia and so many little small details in between the lines that are really, really worth digging into.
Very, very cool. Again, the project is Roots and Relics, one of the pilot screening at Dances with Films in New York. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.